Scaling a high ticket offer from 0 to 1.4 million in only 4 months sounds impossible, but in this video, I'm going to tell you why it's not and how he did it. Because that's exactly what I did when I helped Jason Capital launch a brand new high ticket offer completely from scratch while he had no customers and no real sales process in place. But yet in 120 days, we hit 1.4 million in revenue. In this episode, I'm going to break down exactly how we did it and how you can use the same strategies to scale your own high ticket offer. Now, scaling a high ticket business is challenging. Most founders struggle with getting enough qualified leads, closing deals actually consistently without relying on top tier talent, and knowing when to scale without losing control of their sales process. Without a clear system, you end up with random wins instead of predictable growth. And in the high ticket space, I'm assuming for everyone that's listening to this episode, you want predictability. But when you follow a structured sales process, scaling actually becomes repeatable. And when it's repeatable, that's when you actually gain predictability. So by the end of this episode, we're going to cover a few things. Number one, the three key factors that helped us scale to that 1.4 million mark. The biggest mistakes that I see a lot of businesses make when they're actually trying to grow and they're trying to scale. And finally, a simple sales process that you can use to increase conversions and get sales significantly faster. If you want to grow your high ticket offer, this episode is for you. So a couple of years ago, I was introduced to Jason Capital, who has multiple millions of followers on social media. I think about 3 to 4 million combined if you were to take like his TikTok, his Instagram, his YouTube and everything and combine it together. And I was introduced to him by a friend named Sharon, who also happens to be my mentor, and he's really close friends with Jason. And Sharon's like, hey, Jason wants to put together a team to launch this new offer from scratch. And I think you're the guy for the job. So when I was connected with Jason, I realized he had nothing in place. Like this offer hasn't been put together yet. It wasn't proven out. He didn't have any team together except for himself and somebody to do tech. And by tech, I mean set up the website, handle any type of connections with technology, with CRM, et cetera, domains, all that fun stuff. So that's the only team that we had in place. So when he said, do you think that we can sell this, even though it hasn't been proven at a high ticket offer? I was like, yes, absolutely. Of course. Like, you're Jason Capital. Are you kidding me? And what's funny is he actually wanted to sell it for only about $4,000 as his pre-launch. But when I saw how good the offer was and I saw what his promise was for these individuals and what he has accomplished and that he wanted to help other people do what he did with his courses. To give you context, in the span of only a decade, he did over 40 million in course sales. So he wanted to help other entrepreneurs who had big brands sell their course by using his strategies, his methodologies, so that they can hit significant revenue as well. So when I saw the offer and the promise, I was like, honestly, I think we're selling this for too cheap. I think we can sell this out of the gate for about 10K. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, absolutely. You have credibility. Like there's no reason why for a new beta launch and what the promise is here that we can't get the market to see value. So I knew going into it, how are we going to go and sell this offer? What's the strategy? So we focused on three things. Number one, I knew we needed a clear qualification process. That's all I focused on. Just had a conversation with Jason and said, hey, listen, what are the things we need to look for that will make somebody an ideal client for you? Obviously, you have this big brand, but a lot of the marketplace don't. There's not going to be people that have 2 to 3 million followers. Will this work with people that have a little bit of followers? And if so, what's that minimum amount? Notice how I was getting very crystal clear on who it is that we can help and what are the actual qualifications. How much engagement do they need to be able to use this strategy? Do they need proof of concept? Have they sold this offer before? Can we help somebody who is in the very beginning stages of their business? They've never sold an offer before. So we listed everything out as part of our qualification process. And that's literally going to be the first step that you are going to do for your offer. You must get crystal clear on who is qualified for your offer so you know exactly who it is that you're going to go after. And you only focus your entire sales process around helping those individuals. The second thing we did was a repeatable sales system. Okay. Repeatable. I learned this from my very, very first mentor years ago when I was in college. Funny enough, it was in an MLM network marketing company. Probably heard of those before. So that was kind of my first entrepreneurial journey out of college when someone invited me to join a network marketing company. And I ended up meeting the top income earner of this business. He was a multimillionaire. And I got to follow him around. I got to see how he was selling this business opportunity, how he was mixing up products, and how he kept everything just so simple. He wasn't talking about the features and benefits. He wasn't even really bragging about all the case studies and testimonials, which really shocked me. And after following him, I'm just observing. I remember having a conversation with him and being like, "Hey, how come you don't talk about the health benefits of this? Or how come you're not mentioning that like everybody else?" And he smiled and he looked at me and he goes, "You want to know why and how I became the top income earner of this company?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "While everyone else focuses on the product, I only focus on the business side. And I learned early in my career that if I can just make this process so simple to where I can mix up energy, hit play in a video, and go out and recruit a 5-year-old. If I know that a 5-year-old can follow just a simple, repeatable process, he's like, that is called duplication. And when you have a process that is so easy that can duplicate and get results, that's how you win and you scale. I just keep everything simple, whereas everyone else makes it complex. And that really hit me long term. And I tried to throughout my career say, okay, how can I put this simple, repeatable process in place, even in the high ticket space? How can I make it to where I can hire someone who's not a rock star sales rep, somebody with just an average skill set and say, hey, I've already done the legwork for you. I already know what objections you're going to have. I already know what you need to say. Here's the process in the script. When they say this, all you got to do is we've even recorded videos for you. Just hit play in a video. And that's literally what we did. By keeping things repeatable and keeping them simple, that is how you're able to grow and you're able to scale in the beginning stages. Now, of course, over time, when you hit a specific level and you're trying to reach a different level of scale, like you're trying to scale from, let's say, 10 million to 100 million, absolutely, you need to focus on rockstar talent. But for most people listening to this podcast, if you're launching a brand new offer, or you're kind of in the beginning stages, or you're only around like 6 figures, you don't really need to stress over rockstar talent. You need to stress over duplication, repeatability, and being able to hire average people and hit KPI. That is how you're going to get results in the beginning stages. And finally, the last thing we were focused on was simply just data, getting as much data as possible to know our numbers of how many people do we need to talk to have a conversation. How can we refine that? How many conversations does it take to be able to get somebody to the next step on a call? How many calls do we need to get somebody who's qualified to move forward to the point where they're paying, right? How can we collect data? And what kind of objections are we running into? What are people on these calls actually saying? I would literally lay everything out from being on call after call after call. And by getting data first, it made the next step of scale significantly easier. What do I mean by that? When we first started, everything was organic. By organic, I mean literally he would just do stories on his social media, on his Instagram, and we would just go after whatever traffic or responses. So to collect data, it's very simple. You just post content. You can post content on Instagram, you can post content on LinkedIn, but it's strategic content that is laid out to the qualifications that we did in step one, right? Clear qualification process. Once you know the qualifications, you make content that's relatable to those people. And by getting all this data towards the end of this process, remember I said about 120 days, we didn't run ads until probably around like month 3. So once ads started going up and ramping, our ads were crushing it. They were converting literally on day 1. We had the right video sales letter that was hitting the audience. That wasn't by design. It was because I was able to go to Jason and say, hey, here's what I think you should say. Here's how you should frame it. Here's the language that people are telling me on calls. I was able to use that data, give it to him. And he, being the amazing copywriter that he is, like, right, I don't want to sugarcoat it. He's an amazing copywriter. So that is a very unfair advantage in terms of getting things to convert. But I was able to give him the data he needed to write the correct copy. So our ads converted off the bat, our video sales letter, we're going through and qualifying, and we were just constantly iterating this entire process. So most people just like to kind of just jump in and try scaling in the very beginning when they have no data, and it doesn't make any sense. Why would you purposely light money on fire without knowing everything about your avatar, without knowing their pain points, without knowing what it is that's going to make them tick and what it is that they're actually looking for. It just doesn't make sense. Yet tons of entrepreneurs do it completely backwards. So if you're watching this, just know you don't have to stress about traffic and running ads. You can absolutely get a process going organically first, and you should get a process going organically first before going into ads. So at first, of course, we didn't know if this process would absolutely work. We were just testing. But once we saw the numbers climb, I knew that we had actually cracked the code for launching a brand new offer completely from scratch to a marketplace, getting that duplication of sales and able to really get proof of concept consistently before even going and hiring anyone. So when we got to the point of hiring, why did this work so well? So McKinsey actually did a study and they found that most high ticket businesses struggle because they do not have a system for sales in place at all. And they found that companies who followed a structured sales process grow 30% faster than those who don't. 90% of high performing sales teams were actually using a repeatable system for closing deals, whereas the low performers of other companies, they weren't following a system at all. In fact, they were just winging it, which is not a smart way to do business. And the final thing that they found is that speed actually matters. Speed is king, which we were able to use in Jason's case. What I mean by speed is companies that engage with leads first win the deal 90% of the time. Think about your business right now. Okay. If you have a website, opt in pages, or even if somebody is reacting to a social media post that you did online, how quickly, how much time goes by from the time that someone comments on your post? Do you reach out to them? How much time goes by from the moment somebody likes your post? Is anyone reaching out to them? Is anybody even reaching out to them? If there's no outreach going to those individuals, you're already missing out because speed matters. How much time goes by from the moment someone opts in to your website for showing interest or gets a lead magnet or downloads a training? Do you have anyone reaching out to the individual and is it happening in a timely manner? Because speed matters. And this is not a guesstimate, right? This is actual studies done by McKinsey. So what's the lesson here? The lesson is this. If you don't have a sales system that is simple and repeatable, you don't have scalable revenue, period. So let's break it down. How do we actually involve all these steps? What do we actually do? What can you do to take away from this episode so that you can be set up to win and scale a high ticket offer? The first thing we did was focusing on qualification first. So instead of trying to convince anyone and everyone, we only spoke to people who were the right fit. Obviously, this is done with strategic content to attract those individuals, right? Organic content, as well as having a clear application process in place. So the questions you put on an application, why do we use applications? Well, very simple. It's designed to know and review ahead of time, is this possibly someone who could be a good fit? And if it's not, how can we just respect their time, not waste our time by hopping on a call and only focus on those who are a good fit? Now, if you want to know what that qualification process actually is, it's called the Inception closing framework. I actually covered it in the very first episode of this podcast. So if you have not heard that, I highly recommend you go back to episode 1, listen to that episode because I break everything down so you know exactly what to do for implementing this step 1 on the qualification frame. Super, super important. Now, the only downside to this, there is a downside. Okay. I want to give a warning here. I know scaling from 0 to 1.4 million sounds cool. It sounds sexy to say out loud, but the downside is this. If you don't have operations in place and you use the qualifying frame that I'm talking about now and from episode 1, it can break your business. So the downside is that it's not a question of whether or not what I'm saying on this show works. It's to the degree that it does work, which is the problem. And we ended up running later into future months because we sold so much too fast. The business actually did start breaking because we didn't have a chief operations officer. We didn't have someone who was really, really good at handling ops and to fulfill all these deals we were bringing in. It got to the point where we were averaging between 5 to 8 high ticket deals a week as our team was growing. So that's a lot of fulfillment. And because we sold so much too fast, now that I think about going back in time, I wish we kind of pulled back the brakes a bit and really dialed in operations. But hey, You live and you learn. We didn't know any better. When you have somebody who's one of the top marketers in the world, and you have me who's really, really good at sales, and you combine forces, bringing in deals is not a challenge, but fulfilling on them is. So if you're watching this and your offer is more like a done for you type thing, maybe you're an agency owner and there's a lot of moving components that you need to do for your offer, then really be careful on how many deals you close with this and make sure that you're dialing in operations. It's okay to move slow and get operations correctly. But if you're watching this and you're doing more like coaching, if you're literally only doing coaching, there's no done for you component, you can be pretty aggressive. And this strategy crushes in the high ticket coaching space as well. But if you're like tech, AI, agency, definitely be careful with leveraging this process because you don't want to sell too much too quickly. All right. Once we have the qualification process down, hopefully you do as well, then we focus on just a repeatable sales system. It was time for me to go and hire reps to take calls because we had an abundance of appointments, an abundance of leads. And it was time to actually get someone who can follow the same process and some structure that I did. I only focused on duplication. I said, okay, cool. How can I make this to where I take my exact process? Here are my recordings. Here's every call that I had. Here's the script. Here's how I set the agenda. Here's how I lay out the pitch. Here's the testimonials I love to show at what time. Here's a link to all the videos. I had everything out on a silver platter to set reps up for success as much as humanly possible. And when they came on, there was no winging it. The SOP became the Bible, right? You must follow this process. When it comes to a repeatable process, you must show the seriousness when scaling a team on what it means to not use that process. So what I mean is I've hired people in the past in other teams, and a lot of times people like to be cute or try something new and do things your own way. And you got to lay the hammer down on reps who do that and say, hey, listen, I've already taken the arrows in the back for you. I've already, anything you could run into, any objection, any pain and suffering you're going through, I've already done for you. I know this process works. So until you can use this process and beat me, when you can do better than what I did, do not touch this process. Do not change anything. Do not get cute. You must follow what works. When you have that level of extreme on your process, that's how you can actually go and scale, because a lot of times people like to come in who are new and they like to get cute and they want to test new things out. You should have already done the testing. You don't need people to come in there and do that. Set them up for success and make sure you hold them to that standard. And finally, the last step was literally just scaling, ramping up ad spend, hiring a few more people. We didn't hire a massive team until, well, we actually didn't even have a massive team, but we didn't really start hiring a bunch of people until we knew that the offer was converting at a consistent rate and that fulfillment was dialed in. So you have to have enough data, you have to have enough proof of concept. And then when you're ready to go and ramp up, the scale phase is very simple. You purposely try to break the system. You ramp up ads, you ramp up outreach, and you want to do everything you can to see where is the system going to break. And then you can dial back and actually go and fix those things. But before you do that, you have to have your qualification in place. You have to have a repeatable sales process, the sales script, know the numbers and KPI, have data, and then you can go to ramp up, spending money on ads and actually focusing on scale. So in closing, if you want to grow your high ticket sales company, you need to start improving your sales process. So today, I would say, take a look at your current system. Ask yourself a few questions. Okay. Number one, do you have a clear qualification process? Are you just focused on working with anyone and everyone? Or are you actually focused on people who meet a specific criteria that you know you can help and get results? Now, I know this is hard. I've talked to tons of business owners, tons of entrepreneurs, and the frustration most people have is they're like, but they feel like they're missing out. They're like, I know I could help everyone. Well, everyone doesn't scale. And you can't hire sales reps to work with anyone and everyone. It's just not possible. So you must get clear and dial in on your qualification process. Number two, is your current team, if you have one, actually following a repeatable process? And finally, are you scaling? If you're at scale phase, are you actually scaling based on real data that you've collected and proven out first before scaling? If not, then that's where you need to start. Start with the data. So question, what is your biggest challenge right now with scaling your high ticket offer? I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or you need help brainstorming on anything, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'd love to have a conversation and see if I can help. And if you found this episode helpful, Please subscribe and share it with a friend or anyone you know that is trying to launch and scale a high ticket offer. Now, today we talked about scaling a high ticket offer fast, but what if you don't have the right team to handle that growth? And what if you don't have an audience in your B2B like Jason did? What if you don't have millions of followers? What do you do? In the next episode, I'm actually going to break down how we built a 6-figure per month outbound sales team for an agency going after completely cold traffic. Yes, you heard that right. Completely cold traffic. They didn't know anything about the company. They weren't a follower of a page. They were completely brand new, cold, and never heard of this business before. And we're going to cover that on the next episode. You are not going to want to miss it. See you on the next one.